Hello students. In this video we're going to take a look at learning and genetics. Are there particular genes that aid in learning, or are there connections between the two? And I chose a topic that I think you might be interested in thinking about, and that is the learning of language or song in birds. So let's move to our PowerPoint. And here we are. We'll just bump right to that. So this is not lecture 12, this is lecture 11, learning and genetics. That's my bad. And what I want to do, well, let's just think about what we've been focusing on already. We've been thinking about learning and the role of nature or genes on it. Today we're going to study birdsong, and what is analogous to birdsong essentially is language in humans. We're going to think about the genetic basis of this learning. So here we go. Let's get started. So the question is, what's the relationship between learning and genetics? We're going to focus just on one particular area, and that is language and birdsong. Now it turns out that some birds have to learn their song. Not all birds, but a number of birds have to actually learn how to sing their bird songs. Zebra finches are in one of these categories. Zebra finches are native to Australia. They're small birds. They're beautiful birds that have this gorgeous coloration with the bright orange bill and the orange puffs on their cheeks. They are seed eaters. They eat grass, seeds. They live to be 15 years old. Their life history goes something like this. Their young are raised by mom and dad, by a mother and a father. They're typically sexually mature within 3 months after they hatch. And what typically happens during a breeding cycle, and pairs can breed throughout the year, basically what they will do is they will build a nest. The male will sing a courtship song to attract females. They will pair up, build a nest. Female will lay eggs, and after they hatch, the male and the female are going to take care of the young at the nest. Then they eventually become mature. The young are sexually mature in 3 months. Now during this time, female birds don't sing, but male birds must learn their courtship song. When they are at the nest, they start singing, and they become better and better and better. At first, they're essentially babbling, and they then learn their song. So how do they learn their song? Well, here's the kind of predictable pattern by which zebrafinch learn their song. So baby zebrafinches basically have to listen to a tutor. At first, their song, if you will, or their vocalizations are kind of erratic. They're just whatever, just a whole bunch of flexibility, all sorts of babbling. But then, as they listen to a tutor, another male, typically an adult male that's dad, because he's nearby, they listen to a tutor, they compare their song to that tutor's, and their song changes to match that tutor's. Okay? The males must hear, their young males must hear the song somewhere between 4 and 12 weeks of age. That is considered essentially the sensitive period in which a male must hear the song in order for the male to be able to learn its song. And as this male hears the song, he practices and practices and improves, and it takes about 3 months before he can sing a typical zebrafinch male song. And once the male learns its song, the song will basically stay the same during the rest of its life. And that's not perfectly true, but it's pretty close, okay? Now, what happens if the male is raised by another species? So lots of research has been done on this field. It's a pretty interesting area of work, in fact. So what if you take baby zebra finches and raise them with foster parents like Bengalese finches? Then what happens? males that are raised with Bengalese fathers will copy the Bengalese finch song. Their song will still sound kind of like a zebra finch's in that the timing and the phrasing will be similar, but their song will be Bengalese. So you get this kind of strange mix. But this shows us that the brain is plastic. The brain can learn the Bengalese finch song if given a tutor. If a male doesn't hear a tutor during that sensitive period, what happens? The male will babble its whole life. It can never learn the song after that sensitive period of time. Once you've closed the window, so to speak, then learning can't happen. This is an example of imprinting, right? And does it need a live tutor? Does a male need to see a live tutor in order to learn its song? Can it use just a video, for example? Well, it turns out that a live tutor is by far the most effective way to learn their song. We're not exactly sure why, but probably the live tutor provides interactions with the young male, so that the young male kind of learns, oh, this is good, oh, this is bad, that the young male gets feedback, so to speak. It's a little bit like how it's easier to learn when you're in real person, not just virtually, like on this video, right? Okay. So maybe being live tutor gives a young bird someone to copy, someone to imitate. It's easier to imitate a real live bird than a video vocalization, or than a vocalization. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. So researchers are like, all right, what's happening in the brain as the male learns its song? Are there regions in the brain that we can identify that are responsible for learning and producing male song? Yes. Different regions of the brain are responsible for different parts of song learning. Absolutely. So it turns out this is a picture of the brain, then of a bird's brain, okay, on our screen. And I don't know if you can see it very well, but there are different areas in the cerebral cortex, part of the that are part of the forebrain, called the LMAN, area X, and the DLM, which is found in the thalamus. These three areas seem to be important in the learning pathway. Right? So the area X is really analogous to part of the basal ganglia in humans, so you may have heard of that. It connects to the areas of the frontal cortex. Together, these three, oops, sorry, kind of hit the wrong thing there. And these three areas, okay, seem to be very important in the learning pathway. If one of these areas is blocked, the song doesn't develop. Or if one of these areas is removed or lesioned, then song learning never happens. Okay. And then there are two parts of the cerebral cortex, part of the motor cortex, that seem to be important in the motor component, the actual act of producing the song. So we've got a learning component, part of the brain that's involved in learning the song, and then producing the song. So the HVC and the RA are clusters of neurons, we call them nuclei, that are part of the motor pathway that actually tell the bird to produce the song. And so you can see how there's a lot of arrows on this diagram, right? So we get these arrows connecting, area X to the DLM to the LMAN, and then we get connections to what are called the motor nuclei, okay? And the motor nuclei tell the larynx area what to do, tell the muscles how to produce the sound. So researchers have pretty well understand that all of these areas play an important role in the learning of song and then in the producing of song. Okay, those are what we would call the anatomical structures responsible for birdsong. So, are there any particular genes that are involved in, say, the learning of the song? That's what we're kind of interested in, right? Can we find the genetic basis of birdsong in zebra birds? Wouldn't that be, or zebra finches? Wouldn't that be cool, right? Haisler et al. They have done some research on birdsong in zebra finches, and there are some genes that seem very important in the learning of birdsong in zebra finches. One of those genes is what's called FOXP2. Okay. FOXP2 is an interesting gene. FOXP2 is a gene that's called a forkhead box gene. And these genes act as transcription factors. Now, transcription factors are proteins these genes code for transcription factors. The FOXP2 codes for a transcription factor, a protein, that can bind to other gene promoters and regulate other genes. So FOXP2 is kind of a gene regulator. It's important in embryogenesis, and it seems to be implicated in several developmental diseases in mice and in humans. We've seen this gene before, all right? And what's interesting about this gene is it's highly conserved. That means if you look at a sequence of all of the nucleotides in this whole gene, it's very, very similar from animal to animal to animal to animal, from humans to mice to birds to crocodiles. It's very similar. There are tiny changes. So, for example, and Haisler et al. Sequenced this gene. In other words, identified the nucleotide sequence in 11 birds, 1 crocodile, and it's also been sequenced in mice and chimps and humans. It's been sequenced, and we're finding it's very, very similar or highly conserved across different species. And that usually means this is a really important gene. And it makes sense if this gene codes for a transcription factor that regulates lots of other genes in the brain, it's going to be important. So where do we see this gene turned on? Which cells, what parts of the brain is FOXP2 expressed in? Okay, well, it turns out that it is expressed in many locations, but it's particularly expressed in the forebrain, in the striatum nuclei, including area X. I love that name anyway, isn't that cool? Area X. Area X, the striatal nucleus in area X is analogous to the human basal ganglia, right? You've probably heard of the basal ganglia before as being really important in memory and learning and in a variety of things. But we also know that area X is important in the learning of birdsong. That's what we just learned, that that's an important neuroanatomical region of the brain where learning birdsong is necessary for the learning of birdsong. When is FOXP2 expressed in these brain nuclei that are involved in birdsong then? FOXP2 expression is elevated in area X during times of vocal plasticity. So we see high levels of FOXP2 protein when the bird is very young, between ages 35 and 50 days, right? The first few weeks of life. That's when the male zebrafinch is learning its song, right? So we see high levels then, and we see higher levels in adult. We also, these researchers also noticed that you see higher levels in adult canaries during their breeding season, during July, August, and September, when they're they're continuing to learn new song. They continue to learn new song, and so those levels go up. Well, that's what we see. Those levels go up in canaries. Okay. cells in area X, we think, may be involved in reward learning. And it seems that the FOXP2 gene is expressed in high amounts during focal learning when these animals are trying to learn their song, when they're practicing their song. Okay? We're not exactly sure. Well, we're getting to that. I guess that's question 4 there. I just want to make sure that I'm reading my notes. Yeah. So the idea is that elevated FOXP2 expression in area X during times of song plasticity, when they're learning their song, means that FOXP2 protein must play an important role in song learning. That's what we're thinking. Somehow the protein that this gene produces is really important during in the production of song, in the learning of song. Well, what does it actually do? What does this protein do? Well, we're not sure exactly. We do know it's going to regulate other genes. We do know that it's expressed, at least initially, when song learning is happening in high levels. But we think that the FOXP2 protein probably somehow limits or balances neural plasticity. It helps to generate song stability rather than generate new song. During this time of practice, remember, a male is learning its song. It's trying to go from being babbling of any kind of song to a very specific song. And researchers think that this FOXP2 gene produces a protein that helps to stabilize the song, to make it less plastic over time. Researchers have also found that while FOXP2 gene is initially more highly expressed, you see a downregulation of FOXP2 gene as learning happens. So, not exactly sure what it does. We do think that it is really important, however. That's okay. So we see with the zebra finches, they have to learn their language, if you will. They have to learn their bird song. They can learn it only during a window of time, so it's sort of imprinted, but they have to learn it. They have to practice it. And we know that there are certain regions of the brain that are involved in that practice and production of speech. We even know that there's at least one gene whose product contributes to the development of the song, the learning of the song even. Well, in our next video, we'll take a look at how FOXP2 may play a role in human language. Alrighty.